action.
All right. Hello, my name is Mary Weathers. I'm an outgoing lawyer at Bar in Madison, where I've been working for 2 years. And I'm here today to talk with Bill Evans, who is one of the tax partners at Bar in Madison.
Yes, hello, my name is Bill Evans. I'm the 38-year-old partner in the tax department at Bar in Madison, the large corporate law firm in Seattle. And I've been with our firm for 13 years and have enjoyed a successful and fulfilling career up to this point.
All right. Well, I think maybe, I'm really happy that we're having this opportunity to speak with each other today because, we did work together. Since you reached out, I'd kind of like to hear from you first, just to get us hear, why you wanted to speak with me today.
Of course, Mary. Thank you so much for taking this opportunity to meet with me. I've enjoyed working with you, just getting to know you informally over the past month, because I noticed that you were, a new associate in the tax department, and you'd mentioned that you kind of bounced around a lot in a few of the other departments at Bar in Madison. And really, I just have to say that I'm here to, sort of let you get everything off your chest that might be weighing you down at work. I know that you may have received some unfortunate news, and, I just wanted to let you know that I admire your work. I admire your diligence, and I just want to make sure that the corporate climate at Bar in Madison is something that you have found supportive, and, let you know that for me, I'm really just, looking for a friend to talk to at work. So I didn't want to overstep any boundaries, and let you know that that's really the place where I'm coming from.
Sure. Well, I appreciate you sharing that with me, because this news about leaving Bar and Madison was unexpected for me, and disappointing. I feel that I've done really good work in my time at Bar in Madison, that in my performance reviews, I received satisfactory feedback. And so I was kind of surprised that out of the tax personnel, that I was the one that was selected. And I would really appreciate getting a little bit more insight into how that decision was reached, because I do know that you're on the hiring and firing board. And for my professional development, I would really benefit from getting some of that feedback.
Well, sure, of course. As you understand, here in Seattle, the economy can be pretty volatile. We're currently experiencing a downturn, and you are right, I am on the hiring committee. And as you understand, I was also on the committee for the sexual harassment in terms of the Seattle Bar Association, and I recently had a comment published in the local bar association journal. But our area in the tax department was the hardest hit. So along with trusts and estates and litigation, we decided to lay off 4 of the 26 junior associates. And, it really wasn't up to me in terms of how you made the short list, but I wanted to definitely hear from you about, your diligence and your commitment, and determine if you think that Bar in Madison is actually the right corporate climate for you.
Sure. As I said, I had my experience at Bar in Madison was fairly, positive. I was working those, I was often, working those extra hours because I was dedicated to my work. I'm glad that you brought up the sexual harassment committee, which is outside of our work, because frankly, there were some incidences between the two of us where I felt like your friendly behavior overstepped that line from normal employee interaction. And, while I appreciate having coworkers reach out and want to work together, there were some incidences that I felt uncomfortable in. And ultimately, we reached a point where I brought that to your attention, and asked if you would cease inviting me to dinner, because it was beginning to make me feel a little uncomfortable, the interactions we were having. And with that, I would like to hear your perspective on it, because I don't think, you seem like a nice person. I don't think that it was your want to make me feel uncomfortable, but I'd like to hear your perspective on those interactions.
Well, sure. Thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. I know that I never intended to make you feel awkward or uncomfortable. Because one thing I may not have shared with you is that I have recently separated from my wife, and we've had a hard go at it over the last couple of years due to her problem with alcoholism. So I have decided to go ahead and create some space between she and I had a confidant in my former executive assistant, Ann Weiss, whom you may know as she's working with one of the other associates and partners now. And Ann and I were very close, and Ann was struggling with her personal relationship. And we were able to counsel one another for a very long time. And Ann fortunately was able to work her relationship out with her husband, which I really admire. And she attributed that to the conversations that she had with me. So I thought that I would be able to maintain warmth and professionalism in terms of basically just extending my friendship. And that's really what those invitations to dinner were fundamentally about, just innocent, because I know that we both have a keen interest in our occupation. And based on your diligence, I see that you probably want to grow as an associate. So I think the most important thing is that, we both want integrity on and off the job. So respect is of the utmost importance to me, Mary, and I want you to know that. So I hope that we can maybe move forward from here in terms of self-assuredness, because I know that we both want a sense of belonging. And I just want to let you know that I've taken steps to also reach out for personal counseling as well.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that with me. I'm sorry to hear that you're going through a difficult personal time right now. And I'm sorry that the changes in your life as far as who you have available to talk to has changed. And I'm glad to hear that you've sought out professional support, because I certainly went through a great deal of stress, pondering the situation between us, and having a lack of feeling a lack of control over the situation as far as how to communicate to you how I was feeling, because we are professional coworkers, because we do have a professional relationship. And I found myself in a difficult position where I was trying to manage the situation in as gentle a way as possible, which was conveyed through repeatedly declining your offers. And for me, the sort of moment that were kind of pushed it over the edge was the physical contact. And I can recognize the fact that perhaps we have different interpretations of what's appropriate friendly behavior. But my understanding is that physical contact isn't particularly appropriate for a professional environment, really regardless of the intent behind it. And so my concern is that we might have two different interpretations of what might fall under the category of sexual harassment. And in your interactions with employees, even though they're coming from a friendly place, that there might be other employees in the future that feel similarly to me. And as I said, I'm happy to hear that you've undergone counseling. But I'm wondering if this, what I'm sharing about how I felt, is at all impacting you.
Oh, well, goodness, Mary, you'll have to remind me. I guess I'm not really sure in terms of when physical contact may have necessarily occurred between us, because, I know that, like I said, I've always considered you to be the ever diligent worker, and I was initially attracted to you because you reminded me of myself when I was first getting started, and I appreciated your dry sense of humor, and I thought of you more as someone that I could talk to, since, as I mentioned, Ann Weiss wasn't around to talk to anymore. And so, my initial intrigue passed when you mentioned that you weren't interested and that you had a boyfriend, and I wanted to respect that, because I know that we are both skilled, trained, and educated people who, really seek victory in our workplace, and we want job achievement. So to be effective in our professional tasks, I wanted to just convey that I thought you had a personal aptitude. So I guess what I really am trying to understand is how how my personality or any physical contact that I have to be completely sincere about, I can't recall, because, I've had a need to heal a lot of heartache and emotional pain these days. So I'm trying to get out of my quagmire. So I do just want to backpedal and let you know that I'm here to make sure that I'm able to clarify any professional ambiguity that we may have been experiencing in the workplace.
Right. I guess for the sake of clarification, I would be interested in hearing what your understanding of sexual harassment is.
Well, sure. I know that as far as our applicable federal law and Bar and Madison's policy against sexual harassment will state that it will basically cover anything that is considered hostile, unwelcome, sexually offensive, quid pro quo harassment, promising benefits for sexual favors, or threatening adverse employment if those favors are withheld. So our policy at the firm is to provide that if anyone should be the victim of harassment, that they should voice their concerns to, their supervisor or Karen Thurideau, our director of personnel, or even Ellen Levine, the partner in trust and estates department. I mean, had you had a chance to reach out to any of those individuals to get clarity on what sexual harassment is considered? I basically, have to admit that I never perceived our interaction as being threatening or hostile. So please correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure. So I'm familiar with our policy as well as it's written. That's something that's handed out to all of the employees. And I would say that what transpired between us would fall under the unwelcome attention category, in my opinion. And again, to reiterate, I understand, from what you're saying, that it was not intentional, but I feel that it's something that could easily continue on. If I don't share my experience, and if the behavior isn't corrected, because it did cause me quite a deal of stress and hurt, that was then coupled by being laid off. And I wouldn't want somebody else to feel uncomfortable working late at the office, or for your professional relationship with other employees in the future to be colored by this. So I think, I appreciate the fact that you're seeking personal counseling, but I'd like to see, some initiative being made towards forming a stronger understanding of how broad sexual harassment can be, and also how common it is in the workplace. I know that in your position on the committee, you've expressed the opinion that it's not, that it's not a top issue, that it's not something that is particularly prominent or prevalent in law firms. And I would like to see that opinion explored, and for some additional thought and education to happen.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And I think a great way to do that, since you're already receiving some personal counseling, I think that the company could benefit from having, a firm-wide sexual harassment training, where everyone can become a bit more informed about what sexual harassment looks like, because in the definition in our manual, it is very legalese. It's very if you take it, it's up for interpretation. You can look at it at face value and say, oh, hostile. I know what hostile interaction looks like. It's threatening. It's aggressive. It's angry. Versus something like unwelcome is something that kind of falls on the victim in a situation. And with the sexual harassment training, I think situations like this could be avoided, and behavior that perhaps in the past was thought to be acceptable could be corrected in a way that nobody is being singled out.
Okay, definitely. I have to admit that I do feel relieved in terms of your expression, because I do endorse and agree with you as far as unwelcome attention that I may have provided to you, because I know that ultimately all you're seeking is a settled career, and you've chosen the firm, and we're just so honored to have you in the tax department. So, based on your diligence and your confidence, I want to express that I absolutely will own everything that has occurred between you and I. And I do have to ask, have you shared this expression with anyone other than myself? Again, have you reached out to anyone, or Ellen Levine or Karen Theodoro or anyone outside of the firm?
At this time, I haven't reached out to Karen or Alan about this issue. I was really hoping to talk about it with you so that we could uh, reach an understanding between us, ideally, where I had an opportunity to share what my experience was, and basically feel that my opinion was valued, because I was very concerned based upon your statement from the sexual harassment committee, because while it's a collection of quite a few lawyers in the community, it does kind of act as a guiding authority on how people perceive different topics. And sexual harassment is a very complicated subject. And I would really like to see, people on the committee. I'd like to see the committee be made up of people that take sexual harassment seriously, and are engaged and interested in, as we've been talking about, what sexual harassment looks like and the fact that it happens, and what the consequences have been for people. And so I do have to, I do have to go back to that, and I'd like to, address that.
Well, good. And I'm glad that you can reiterate and recircle in terms of what you need in order to be a safe and stable employee at Bar and Madison. And I'm sorry that you haven't reached out to Karen or Ellen, but based on what you've expressed, it sounds like there might be a cadre of individuals at the firm that are experiencing a situation not unlike yours. Is that correct?
Not to my knowledge. I have, my personal experience. And again, just not again, but just to clarify something, I'm leaving in 2 months because I've been laid off. I'm in the process now. I'm of leaving. I was given 2 months and my severance package. So I will no longer be an employee at the firm anymore.
Sure, and I understand that, and I wanted to determine if, like you mentioned, whether or not the climate at Bar and Madison is something that you would want to continue in if this were not necessarily, if a layoff were not pending or as prevalent. Because I guess what I really have to convey is that your layoff has absolutely no contingency upon the conversation that we're having today. And I really want you to know that from my heart of hearts, that whatever occurred between us in terms of unwelcome attention was totally at my own behest and had nothing to do with the decline and the layoffs that occurred across the firm, for instance. So please rest assured that I had nothing to do with your termination of employment, because I didn't make the selection, and I wanted to speak up on your behalf, but I didn't want to be again in an awkward situation because you'd already expressed to me that you were uncomfortable around me. And so I didn't want that to become any more awkward between us.
Right. Well, I appreciate you, wanting to assure me that these interactions between us did not have an effect on the ultimate decision to hire and fire. Although I have to say that it does sound like, in a positive way, that you say that you didn't want to speak up because you didn't want to involve our previous interactions. Because being somebody on the hiring and firing committee, you do have a vote, and with that responsibility comes the responsibility to vote according to your conscience. And if your conscience is guided by my performance, or if it was influenced by our interactions, I'd like to be clear, for, again, my own professional development, to know what ultimately led you to your decision and your involvement in the final choice, being somebody who voted on the committee.
Well, the truth is that despite reasonable review, we realized that you had the least experience among the 4 second-year tax associates, and that you had actually only been with the department for a month, versus the other 3 second-year tax associates. They actually had comparable or perhaps slightly better reviews. And so this decision was a very difficult one for us to make.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I understand when you're, you don't want to lose people. You're as you expressed, there were some reasons involving the economy. And so this wasn't a welcome choice for the committee to have to make. But I really appreciate you being honest about what specifically led to me being the one chosen, because I think I was feeling quite a great deal of stress about why I was the one, because it certainly couldn't have been a random choice. But hearing the reasoning behind it regarding my experience, I can accept that. So thank you for opening up and sharing that with me, because certainly I have a lot of professional growth to go through. I'm quite young in my career, and I was very grateful for the experience I had at the firm, and I'm looking forward to growing elsewhere.
Well, I guess with that being known, I realized that perhaps we maybe entered the conversation today again from different perspectives, because I was coming here to speak with you about patching up the potentially problematic relationship that you've expressed and that we've had over the last month in the tax department. And it sounds like you were mostly concerned about why you were being eliminated. And I, again, just want to reassure you. And so I'd like to know what you really would like from me in terms of your current and former supervisor. I'll be happy to provide you with any reference. As a partner at Barr and Madison, I do have an inside track in terms of what's going on, not just here in the greater metropolitan area, but on the West Coast. And I even have contacts in other places should you decide that Seattle might not be the best place for you. And, I did everything I could to make sure that severance packages were amenable for easy transition, because I know that for me, I see my life crumbling around me. And the only thing that I really have at this point is my prominent status in the firm. And so I will definitely take everything that you've expressed to me to heart and aim to rehabilitate the climate, the cultural climate at the firm in order to make sure that other associates and partners don't wind up in the same seat that you and I are sitting in today.
Sure, sure. And you know, I have to say that part, you know, identifying some of the and clarifying the reasons behind my termination was part of my concern, because it wasn't entirely clear to me if, because of your position on the committee, on the hiring committee, if it wasn't connected in some way towards or with our interactions with one another. And so I'm glad that we were able to clarify that, because that certainly puts me at ease in that area. And I appreciate your willingness to make some changes to the environment at the office, to eliminate the possibility of similar misunderstandings happening again, and other employees having to go through the stress that I experienced, so that they're clearer on what their options are, and other people in the office are clear on what's appropriate and inappropriate behavior, and how to navigate that. I certainly would appreciate a recommendation based upon the work that I've done at the firm. You know, I have every intention of staying in Seattle. I've really enjoyed making it home, and I'd like to, you know, continue in my career. But I do still have some concerns about the harassment committee in particular, and what kind of message is going out from you in your role on the harassment committee. And it would really mean a lot to me if you could vocalize your understanding of sexual harassment and the fact that it exists in the law firms in our community, and the fact that it should be taken seriously, so that people feel comfortable in their workplace and their ability to perform their jobs isn't hindered. You know, in that way, I feel like you'd really be doing the service that the committee seeks to do.
Absolutely. And Mary, thank you for choosing to express your feelings openly, because I have had a lot of privilege, you know, that has put me in a safe, stable position. And oftentimes, as a cisgender individual, I'm not going to be as aware of issues that may be occurring, nor will I have to actually have a complete understanding about what may be occurring, because I often operate, you know, with blinders on. So I'm acknowledging that I want to take these accusations very seriously. And to me, I know that the most important thing is to actually make sure that we are able to use all of our support network to maintain an organization that is supportive, because it's important to find the right job, right? It's important to find the right job, and it's important to keep the right job. And if you find the right job, but the climate and the organizational support is not there, then it's not going to be the right job. So I'm just saying that if there are any other individuals that you know of that would make similar or even more serious accusations, I would hope that you would bring those to my attention at this time, because I'm in a position where my vulnerability will actually motivate me to reconfigure everything that I can on the sexual harassment committee. Plus, my
Sure.
contacts with the Law Journal would allow us to really get some traction on making it an issue that can be addressed and reformed.
Sure. Um, yeah, I think that that's a really compelling argument that there's an opportunity here for not only you yourself, but the law community to become better educated in this issue. And because it can have such a profound impact on the workplace in a negative way. You know, I'm not aware of anybody that personally has had a similar experience at the firm. I am aware that there is an anonymous letter going to the Law Journal that you might be aware of regarding that that sexual harassment is prevalent at law firms. And as I said, it's an anonymous letter, and I can say that it's not written by me. And as far as I'm aware, it's not written by somebody who has experienced harassment, and the details that, you know, of that letter do not implicate anybody in any way specifically. There aren't any names mentioned. It does, from what I understand, bring up the fact that the committee could be doing more, and the fact that certain members of the committee may themselves be engaging in sexual harassment. And I want to share those, what the details that I'm aware of that are in that letter. But again, it's not a letter that I wrote. And it is going to, from what I understand, it will be published in the journal. And so I'm not sure if you're aware of that or not.
Well, the letter had been brought to my attention, Mary, and I'm not going to let that belabor the traction and the benefits that you and I have had in our conversation today, because
Sure.
I can express that basically I have had a combination of hurt, fear, and confusion since joining the sexual harassment committee, and then faced with the layoffs as well. So, I definitely am sort of backed into a corner, and I have to ask something of you, based on everything that you shared, and I want to respond appropriately. And given the next 2 months of your employment at Barr and Madison, anything can happen, right? So I'd like to ask you to maybe spearhead the sexual harassment training that you would like to see take place at the firm. I could really use your support. Perhaps I could help to form a subcommittee with you as one of the principal liaisons for reaching out to the firm, and definitely scheduling that training for raising our awareness at the firm within the next 30 days. Do you think that would be something that you might be interested in doing?
Yes, yeah, I think that that would be a really great opportunity to put some of the things that I've shared with you today and that you've been kind enough to listen to and respond to, putting that into action in a real way that actually, you know, impacts our firm and could potentially impact the community. You know, if we're able to set an example.
Perfect. Well then, you know, I know that it's getting on the weekend now, and I hope that you feel like you've been able to get everything off your chest, because I feel so much better understanding where you were coming from. And um, although I can't make any promises about an enduring 2 month situation, but you know, if it comes to it and you know we find more allowance in the budget, perhaps your position will remain in effect. You know, I can't say anything here nor there, but it would be really helpful if you would help me in good faith to reform the situation that we're experiencing at Bar and Madison, and hopefully other firms in the area will get on board with the training. So perhaps we can get started on that next week. And if you ever feel that you want to work independently, I'll give you as much space as you might need.
Great. Yeah, I appreciate that. And as I said earlier, I'd really like to see some of this. I'm happy. I'm so glad that we're doing something at the office, but I'd really like to see something from the committee as well that publicly addresses sexual harassment. I think that that would really have a positive impact on the community in the long term. And I would like to see, you know, you use your position on the committee the same way you're so willing to use your position within our firm to educate and inform people and in sexual harassment, and you know, help people learn how to practice professional, acceptable co-working behavior. You know, so it would mean a lot to me if the committee were willing to sort of publicly speak out. And if that's, you know, I understand that it's a whole committee and that you're just one person, but if you would be willing to advocate for that.
Well, absolutely. And with that being known, I'm glad you brought it up, because the creative option in terms of a sexual harassment training, I think could get a lot of allegiance. And so if we are able to get something firmed up in terms of a date, perhaps we can publish that and invite other members of the community to the training that could occur at the Bar and Madison facility, for instance. And we can get that published in the upcoming journal alongside, you know, any potential negative criticism. I think that would be a great step forward in terms of acknowledging that, yes, there has been a problem. Here's the case in point, but now we are taking care and acknowledging that there is a problem, and we're looking forward to making sure that there is a tenable, supportive corporate climate in Seattle and in other areas as well.
I think that sounds great. That really is what I'm hoping for. And I'm so pleased that you've been that you're thinking about this in a constructive way, the same way that I am. And I would really be pleased by that. And yeah, I'm glad that we had this conversation, Bill.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much. And then I hope that you have a great weekend. If you need to send me any ideas by email, please please do so. I'm going to go ahead and look at the calendar, and I'm going to contact my people on the committee and let them know that we've got a training in the works. And I'm going to go ahead and reach out to my friend and editor at the Business Journal to let him know that we're going to want to take out a full page ad advertising the training that we're going to be having coming up in terms of alleviating sexual harassment and educating all of our constituents as well.
Great. That sounds great, Bill.
All right, Mary, thanks so much. And I'll look forward to seeing you next time at work.
Yep, sounds good.
You have a good night.
You too.
Bye.